Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So it looks like we have some big news for all of the big three today, being Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. For you Xbox fans out there, it looks like yet another Xbox Studios game leaked out online. Yeah, they have some major problems with leaked information here recently, and once again, this is coming from the same source, so we are going to go over that today. Then when it comes to Nintendo, it looks like Metroid has a very promising future, and then also with PlayStation, some controversial numbers was revealed today, though I don't necessarily think it should be controversial. I'll kind of explain that here in a little bit, but yes, we do have a lot to go over today, so let's just go and jump right into it. And to get things started off today, the Grand Theft Auto The Definitive Edition Trilogy just released, and this did include that Nintendo Switch version. There has been a lot of excitement when it comes to this trilogy, obviously, but especially from Nintendo fans, because typically, the Grand Theft Auto franchise hasn't always been on Nintendo consoles, so this is a really big release, though there has been some questions surrounding this release because, well, we haven't really gotten any kind of gameplay footage or anything like that. It seems like Rockstar has been a little quiet on that end, so that's never really a good sign when a publisher or a developer doesn't show much footage on a product, and unfortunately, it does seem like that there was a reason for that when it comes to the GTA trilogy, especially the Nintendo Switch version. Now, this is coming from the Video Game Chronicles, which reviewed the Switch version, and they did give it a 2 out of 5 stars, which is already not good, but yeah, let's just go and check out this specific quote here. They said, "The frame rate is horrible, often dipping close to 20 frames per second. It's so blurry, you'll think you're actually playing on a CRT, and the loading times are atrocious." Yeah, that's a pretty strong statement, and based off some things that I've been hearing from some other people as well, this is just not a very well-handled trilogy on the Nintendo Switch. I know it's very unfortunate, but if you were looking forward to playing this on the Switch, you might want to just reconsider that for the time being, and then hopefully later on with a patch, maybe they can fix some of the issues, but as of this moment, you might want to pause thinking about picking up that trilogy on the Switch. Now, with that said, I do have some good news for the Nintendo Switch as well, as NPD results came out today, revealing for the month of October that the Nintendo Switch is back on top as the best-selling console. As we talked about last month, the PlayStation 5 did break that 33-month consecutive streak of the Nintendo Switch being the best-selling platform, but there was that question on whether or not that was just because people were kind of holding off for the Nintendo Switch OLED, and here we are 1 month later, and once again, the Switch is back on top, and a large part of that is because of the Nintendo Switch OLED. Now, we'll have to kind of wait and see if this is a lasting effect or not, and whether or not the Nintendo Switch can remain the best-selling platform in the United States in the coming months, but there's actually something even more interesting happening here, and that is with Metroid Dread. This has been a hot topic all year long because a lot of fans want to know how well is Metroid Dread going to sell. For as high quality as this franchise has been historically, these games haven't always necessarily been big-time sellers. We've talked about this time and time again. But one thing that we have seen with the Nintendo Switch is that Switch effect. Games typically just sell better on the Nintendo Switch, and we've been seeing a lot of excitement surrounding Metroid Dread. Obviously, the Metroidvania genre is just bigger as a whole, and, well, it seems like all of this has resulted in a major, just huge launch for Metroid Dread. Yeah, check this out. According to Nintendo's Doug Bowser, Metroid Dread's opening month in October sold 854,000 units. And at first, this sounded like it was a worldwide number, but it was actually later on discovered that this actually sounds like this is just the United States alone. Yeah, that is right. Metroid Dread in the United States alone sold 854,000 units in the month of October. That is an extraordinary launch, and it is the best tracked month ever for the Metroid franchise. For a historically overlooked franchise, this is absolutely huge and just a great look for the future of the Metroid franchise. This is something that Metroid fans have been wanting for years. With the Metroid franchise right now getting so much recognition and just tracking so well here with Dread, this means that Nintendo will unlikely be willing to put this franchise on the bench for long periods of time like we've seen them do in the past. At the very least, it's less likely, so I mean, this is just huge for the Metroid franchise and all of the fans out there that have been playing these games for years and years. So Nintendo, let's continue to build up on this success with more Metroid games in the future. Now, we do have some exciting news for Xbox, as well as more exclusive games did leak out online thanks to, again, Jez Corden over on Windows Central. Him and Jeff Grubbs are just like taking turns by this point to leak more and more information about these Xbox Game Studios games. Yeah, they have a major problem over there with leaked information, but he does talk about 2 more games coming from Xbox Game Studios, one being from Compulsion Games and then the other one from Josh Sawyer over at Obsidian Entertainment. Now, we did talk about the Josh Sawyer game last week, so I'm not going to talk too much about this one because there wasn't much new information here, but we do now know that it is codenamed Pentiment. It is being developed by a smaller team of about 12 developers, and that it is inspired by Disco Elysium. Once again, do not expect this to be a combat-heavy game, but rather it's going to be mainly focused on probably story and player choice. As for this other game, which is the one that we're mainly going to focus on today, would be Compulsion's next game. Now, Compulsion Games has worked on titles such as Contrast and We Happy Few, and right away, something that you're immediately going to recognize when it comes to their games is they know how to make these fantastical and creative worlds. We Happy Few was extraordinary when it comes to their world building. They did a great job with the art style, and really, I think it even had a really well-told story. Actually, stories, but it was very well done as a single-player game. Though, on the other side, they've had a bit of a problem when it comes to bugs and technical issues with their games, and that's kind of held them back from being a little bit more highly regarded. So Compulsion Games is this studio with just a lot of potential, and we're kind of hoping that they're just going to bring it all together under Xbox and that extra budget and time that they can afford. So there is some real interest in what they're doing next, and well, thanks to, again, Jez Corden over Windows Central, well, we kind of know what they're working on here. Yeah, let's just go and check out what he had to say about this game, which apparently is currently codenamed Midnight. Midnight is described as a coming-of-age tale drawing upon inspirations from America's Deep South. The game features magic and large fantastical beasts with a strong southern gothic vibe. The game is a wholly single-player experience with what has been described to me as a strong story. So there you have it, and he actually also posted some concept art which shows these harpy-like creatures, which actually looks really, really cool. We even got a bit of a look at the game's protagonist. So this game actually sounds exactly what some Xbox fans have been wanting from Xbox for such a long time. Some Xbox fans have been asking for more of these big single-player experiences, and Compulsion does sound like they were working on just that. And in fact, it also sounds incredibly unique. And once again, that is something that Compulsion does really well. They do a great job at building these worlds and having this unique artistic style, and it does sound like Midnight is going to be that once again. Now they just need to kind of bring things together, have some good gameplay involved, make sure that there's not a ton of technical issues right out of the gate, and I think that this game could end up being a big, huge title for Xbox. They just have to bring it all together, like I said before, but definitely a game worth watching out for. Now, with that said, when can we actually expect to see this? Well, Jez Corden does note that you're likely looking at the next couple of years for an official reveal and perhaps even a full launch, although it could come later depending on Compulsion's growth and ambitions for Midnight. Yeah, so this one still sounds a little ways away, but I actually am really excited about this one. Of course, I actually really liked We Happy Few, but I want to see what they can really do under Xbox. And once again, for you fans out there that's been asking for these big single-player experiences, well, I mean, it does look like Xbox is doing that this generation. So far, they have games like Redfall, Starfield. Now you have this game being codenamed Midnight, and then also Hellblade 2. It does sound like that they have plenty of these big AAA single-player experiences in development. Now, we do also need to talk about the PlayStation 5 today, as Jim Ryan decided to celebrate the PlayStation 5's first year anniversary with some new information. He did reveal here that there is plenty more to come for the PlayStation 5, with more than 25 exclusives in development. Of course, exclusives is PlayStation's bread and butter, which we'll kind of get back to here in just a moment. And really, it seems like it's going to be no different this generation. They once again are putting a lot of resources into their exclusive library library of games, and it sounds like they have plenty to announce going forward. This is just going to be such a fun generation, and I think it kind of highlights what I've been saying for a while now. Whether you like Xbox or if you like PlayStation, there's just going to be a lot of games to play this generation. It sounds like both of them have a lot of exclusives in development, and that's no coincidence. Both of them are pushing each other right now, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching them duke it out all generation, because gamers in specific, they're the one that's going to reap the benefits here. As I always like to say, competition breeds excellence. But that wasn't quite the only thing that they had to talk about today, because they also revealed the most played games for the PlayStation 5 in terms of hours played. Now, this list isn't really surprising at all when you start to think about it, but the response definitely has been strong, which we'll get into here in just a moment. But here's the most played games for the first year on the PlayStation 5. You have Fortnite, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, FIFA 21, NBA 2K21, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Destiny 2, MLB The Show 21, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Demon's Souls, and then NBA 2K22. Now, when you see this list, you might be wondering why this is controversial, and well, that's because parts of the community are kind of poking fun at the PlayStation 5 for the lack of exclusives on this list. Yeah, this is just one of those narratives that is kind of being created by more rabid parts of the community, and just listen, this is not how this works. This is actually one of my least favorite parts of the game community, because this type of stuff happens more often than what it should. But for the people poking fun at the PlayStation 5's most played games and the lack of exclusives, that's really not how these things work. If you take a look at this list, the one thing that you're really going to notice is that a large portion are multiplayer games, because multiplayer games are designed to have more playtime as it brings players back again and again, as opposed to one-and-done experiences, which are your single-player style of games. Typically, what PlayStation does really well is make good single-player games, but they're not going to have as much playtime as, like, let's say, something like Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. It's just not going to be that way. That, however, does not mean that people aren't enjoying these games, and it does not mean that these games are not having success. The success of these games are not necessarily determined by playtime hours, but rather sales numbers and how many PlayStation 5 units they can sell. These are your system sellers, and a lot of people buy into the PlayStation ecosystem for these single-player experiences. This is not necessarily new information, but what you do need to know is that both exclusives as well as multi-platform games are important. And so far this generation, it does look like the PlayStation 5 has had success with both. Their exclusives such as Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, as well as Miles Morales have all sold well. All three of these have pushed more than 1 million units worldwide, and that will continue to increase as more and more people pick up the PlayStation 5. Now, Returnal is the one game that I don't know what the expectations was for that one. I know it didn't put up incredible numbers, but for the most part, PlayStation has done pretty good the first year with some good exclusives that have sold pretty well, and of course, they've had success with third-party games as well. Really, I can't look at any of this news as bad at all. Now, one last thing that we're going to talk about today is a game that might be going a little overlooked right now, being what lies in the multiverse. This is something that I've always really enjoyed doing on this channel, and just kind of giving attention to these games that might be going a little overlooked, and this one does look highly interesting. They are explaining this game as a story-driven 2D adventure that one could call a dramatic comedy. Based off some of the gameplay that you're seeing here, it does seem like it's going to have a pretty interesting story with a lot of humor injected into it, but it also seems like it has a very creative gameplay mechanic that could be a lot of fun, as you can jump into all of these different dimensions that could make for some clever puzzles and interesting platforming. So this might be an independent game worth keeping an eye on. They did reveal that it is going to release early in 2022 for PC and all consoles. On to the final poll of the day for the week, though, where I asked you all, would you rather just a Metroid Prime 1 remake with significant improvements, or a simple remaster of the entire Metroid Prime trilogy for the Nintendo Switch? As we talked about yesterday, Emily Rogers seemingly has confirmed a Metroid Prime 1 remaster or remake coming sometime in 2022, but she, however, cannot confirm if Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 is included as well. So this had me wondering on what you all would rather have here, and well, it does look like most of you all would prefer a Metroid Prime Remastered Trilogy, with 56% of you voting for that, while 32% voted for a Metroid Prime 1 remake. Truthfully, I was a bit split on this because on one side, I would like to see them make some big improvements with that first Metroid Prime. A lot of people do consider that to be one of the very best games of all time, but I mean, if you go back and play it, it did not age incredibly well, or at least when it comes to its control scheme. I mean, it's still a great game, but its control scheme is very, very clunky to say the least, and I would like to see them majorly improve that aspect of the game. Now, they could probably still do that with just a simple remaster. I mean, technically, Zelda Skyward Sword HD, they didn't really do a lot to that game in terms of visuals, but they did improve its controls quite a bit. So they could do something similar with Metroid Prime. Really, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, and that's why I agree with you all here. I think that a Metroid Prime remake sounds great and all, but I think the biggest improvement that they need is just with the controls. And if they could get all three of these games working with standard controls and just make them actually feel good, well, that is all the improvement that I need when it comes to these games. Having visual improvements would be great as well, but I think the bigger need here would be controls. So that's kind of why I lean towards remasters with better controls, specifically with standard controls. And then plus on top of that, I think it just makes more sense considering we are leading into Metroid Prime 4. It would be nice to have all three of the original Metroid Prime games on the Switch. Now, if they have to remake each one individually just to fix the controls, well, I'm okay with that as well, just as long as we get all three games. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.